In the late spring of AD 68, Emperor Nero, facing the imminent collapse of his rule at the age of 30, took the unprecedented step of recruiting sailors from the Roman fleet at Misenum, located on Italy's eastern coast, to form a new legion. This decision reflected the desperate circumstances of his reign, yet it ultimately proved ineffective. The sailors either could not or would not secure his position. As support for Nero crumbled, both the Praetorian Guard and his German bodyguard abandoned him. The Senate, having declared him an enemy of the state, ordered his arrest. On June 9th, Nero is believed to have taken his own life. By this time, the Senate had already acknowledged the claim of Sulpicius Galba, the 70-year-old governor of Nearer Spain, as the new emperor. In the autumn of AD 68, Galba advanced toward Rome, accompanied by a newly formed 7th Legion raised in Spain and a substantial cavalry force. While Nero's reign had ended, the legion of sailors he had raised remained stationed in Rome, awaiting further developments. Unlike formally established legions, this unit had not been granted an eagle and standards, symbols of official recognition. Nevertheless, the sailors were determined to have their status legitimized, as such recognition would also grant them Roman citizenship. By October, Galba had arrived in Rome to assume power. However, his entry into the city quickly descended into disorder. 3 miles outside Rome, he was met by thousands of Roman citizens who had gathered to welcome him. Among them were the sailors, eager to present their case. Yet Galba dismissed their appeals, refusing to engage with them directly and deferring their request to a later time. This response only heightened their frustration. Determined to be heard, they obstructed others from approaching the emperor and continued following him, loudly demanding recognition. The sight of the sailors brandishing swords unsettled Galba. As his column neared the Milvian Bridge over the Tiber River, he ordered his cavalry to charge through the crowd. The vast majority of the sailors were unarmed and stood little chance against the mounted troops. They were swiftly routed, with many cut down where they stood, while others were killed as they fled back toward the city. Tacitus later described the event as a massacre, claiming that thousands of unarmed soldiers from the unofficial legion were slain by Galba's cavalry. Writing more than 150 years later, Cassius Dio estimated that approximately 7,000 perished on the spot, with the survivors subjected to decimation, where 1 in 10 was executed. However, this figure is almost certainly exaggerated, as a full-strength Roman legion numbered just over 5,200 men, and there is no other record of such a punishment being carried out. News of Galba's ruthless suppression of his own men spread rapidly across the empire, further damaging his already fragile reputation. The brutality of the event left a lasting impression on contemporary observers. Plutarch, then a young man in his 20s, and Tacitus, still in his early teens, both recorded that Galba's arrival in Rome, marked by bloodshed and corpses, was a dire omen for his reign. Despite this violent setback, the surviving sailors remained determined to secure official recognition. The legion that Nero had raised from the fleet remained in the crowded capital, though it was now in custody and significantly diminished in size. The troubled history of this legion was about to take another turn. During his march from Spain to Rome, Galba had passed through Vienne, a prominent city in the Roman province of Narbonne, Gaul. Located on the south bank of the Rhone River, it had once been the capital of the powerful Allobroges tribe. By this time, Vienne had grown into one of the wealthiest cities in Gaul, proudly displaying its prosperity with an inscription above its gates: Vienne flor felix, Vienne is rich and flourishing. However, such wealth and open displays of success inevitably attracted the envy of neighboring communities eager to seize its riches. Between AD 67 and AD 69, the cities of Vienne and Lugdunum were locked in a constant state of conflict. Their rivalry dated back to the 1st century BC, when Vienne had expelled Roman colonists, who were then welcomed by Lugdunum. Tacitus records that the people of Lugdunum sought to inflame tensions by encouraging Roman soldiers to attack Vienne. They specifically targeted the 1st Italica Legion, arguing that while Lugdunum had been founded as a colony for Roman veterans, the inhabitants of Vienne were outsiders. Faced with the threat of an attack, the people of Vienne took action. To defend their city, they raised a new legion. Vienne's primary goal was to raise a force capable of defending the city against attacks instigated by Lugdunum. However, its leaders presented their efforts as an act of loyalty to the new emperor, claiming they were forming legions to support the nearby 1st Italica Legion. As a result, the new unit was named the 1st Adiutrix, or First Supporter Legion, signifying its supposed role in assisting the 1st Italica. Several months later, when Galba passed through the province on his way to Rome, the people of Vienne likely presented him with their newly formed legion. Though it may have had a name, it lacked the official status, eagle, and standards of a recognized Roman legion. Nonetheless, Galba accepted the recruits and incorporated them into his forces as he continued his march. On December 22, in what appears to have been an act of clemency during the Saturnalia festival, possibly linked to his upcoming birthday 2 days later, Galba ordered the release of some of the imprisoned sailors who had survived the October massacre outside Rome. At the same time, he formally recognized the new legion by presenting it with an eagle and standards, officially commissioning it as the 1st Adiutrix Legion. Cassius Dio confirms that this recognition came from Galba rather than Nero. Because the ceremony took place on December 22, the legion would henceforth associate itself with the astrological sign of Capricorn. The first soldiers of the newly constituted 1st Adiutrix were the freed sailors, while the remainder of its ranks were filled with recruits from Vienne's local population. Just 24 days later, on January 15, AD 69, Galba was assassinated in Rome by a disgruntled soldier from the 15th Apollinaris Legion. In the aftermath, the Praetorian Guard immediately proclaimed Otho, the former governor of Lusitania, as the new emperor. Otho had marched to Rome alongside Galba the previous autumn, and the Senate quickly confirmed his rule. Recognizing Galba's unpopularity among the military, Otho moved swiftly to secure the loyalty of key forces. One of his first actions was to win over the fleet at Misenum. Tacitus records that Otho accomplished this by formally enrolling the remaining survivors of the massacre at the Milvian Bridge, who had been held in custody under Galba's strict policies, into the 1st Adiutrix Legion. By joining the legion alongside the recruits from Vienne, these sailors finally obtained the Roman citizenship they had long sought. During the winter of AD 69, the 1st Adiutrix Legion was stationed at Misenum, where it was housed in the quarters of the fleet. By this time, the legions stationed along the Rhine frontier had declared their support for Vitellius, the governor of Germania Inferior, making armed conflict inevitable. Less than 2 months after the former sailors had officially joined the unit, the legion received orders to prepare for its first campaign. A decisive battle was imminent. In April AD 69, the 1st Adiutrix fought on behalf of Otho against Vitellius's forces at the First Battle of Bedriacum in northern Italy. On April 14, AD 69, the forces of Otho and Vitellius clashed along the Via Postumia, closer to Cremona than to Bedriacum. The Othonian army, weary from a long and exhausting march, found itself at a disadvantage as battle commenced. One of the most intense engagements took place where Otho's 1st Adiutrix Legion confronted Vitellius's battle-hardened 21st Rapax Legion. Despite being a newly formed unit, the 1st Adiutrix fought with determination, managing to capture the eagle standard of the 21st Rapax, a moment of great symbolic and tactical significance. However, their success came at a cost. In the chaos of battle, their commander, Orphidius Benignus, was killed as the 21st Rapax fiercely counterattacked in an attempt to reclaim its lost standard. Elsewhere on the field, Otho's 13th Legion was unable to hold its ground against the 5th Alaudae, a veteran Vitellian unit. The tide of battle turned decisively when a contingent of Batavian auxiliaries, renowned for their discipline and ferocity, launched a sudden flank attack on the first Adiutrix. Overwhelmed and outmaneuvered, the newly formed legion was forced to retreat. According to Cassius Dio, the battle resulted in the deaths of approximately 40,000 men, a staggering toll that underscored the ferocity of the fighting. The shattered remnants of Otho's army retreated to their camp at Bedriacum, only to surrender the following day. Accepting their defeat, the surviving troops swore an oath of allegiance to Vitellius, marking the end of Otho's bid for power. Otho's reign was brief, lasting only 3 months before he chose to end his own life. Following his death, Vitellius entered Rome as the new emperor, and the first Adiutrix Legion was reassigned to Spain. However, like his predecessors, Vitellius's time on the throne would be short-lived. Later that year, at the Second Battle of Bedriacum, Vitellius's forces suffered a decisive defeat against the army of Vespasian, who had emerged as a powerful contender for the throne. While the first Adiutrix Legion did not take part in the battle itself, it firmly supported Vespasian's cause. The legion had not forgotten its treatment at the hands of Vitellius following the First Battle of Bedriacum, and its loyalty now lay with his rival. With Vitellius overthrown, Vespasian was declared the new emperor, bringing an end to the period of instability that had gripped Rome throughout the tumultuous year of the 4 emperors. In the summer of AD 69, Civilis, the commander of the Batavian auxiliary forces stationed along the Rhine, leveraged his knowledge of Roman military tactics to devise a strategy for defeating them. His first move was to create a diversion, drawing Roman attention away from Batavia and destabilizing their control over the northern provinces. Although the specific methods Civilis used to incite rebellion remain unclear, he successfully encouraged unrest beyond Batavia. The Cananiphates tribe, under the leadership of their chief Brino, launched attacks on several Roman forts, including Triectum. With much of Rome's military strength engaged in the ongoing civil war in Italy, the northern frontier was left vulnerable. In response, the Romans dispatched legions to suppress the uprising, but Civilis' forces proved formidable. Exploiting their familiarity with Roman tactics and the region's terrain, the rebels decisively defeated the Roman contingents sent against them, further weakening imperial authority in the north. Once Vespasian had secured control of the empire and stabilized the situation in Italy, he turned his attention to the unrest in the north. To restore Roman authority, he appointed Quintus Petilius Cerealis, a trusted relative and experienced general, to lead the campaign against the rebels. Determined to avoid any possibility of defeat, Vespasian assembled a formidable army. Several legions were immediately dispatched to Germania, including the 8th Augusta, 11th Claudia, 13th Gemina, 21st Rapax, and the newly raised 2nd Adiutrix. Additionally, the 1st Adiutrix and 6th Victrix legions were recalled from Hispania, while 14th Gemina was summoned from Britannia. Although portions of these legions were deployed to pacify other regions of Gaul and Germania Superior, the sheer size of Cerealis' army presented a significant threat to the rebels. The 1st Adiutrix was stationed at Mogontiacum alongside 14th Gemina. In addition to their military duties, the legion contributed to infrastructure projects, constructing roads, buildings, and public baths. Upon learning of the Roman forces advancing against him, Civilis recognized that Rome was now fully committed to crushing the rebellion. Realizing the futility of further resistance, he chose to make peace. However, the history of 1st Adiutrix did not end there. Soon, the legion would once again be called into action, this time against the Germanic tribes and the Dacians.